Longtime fans of the show should be familiar with the lender formerly known as Sue Pullen, and I'm pleased to announce that she's back, fresh off a rebrand and ready to help as Sue Mackey. Sue is a certified mortgage advisor at Fairway Independent Mortgage, an equal housing lender who focuses on finding the right product for you and your needs. She has over 20 years of experience helping thousands of homeowners. Whether it's purchasing, refinancing, or even a reverse mortgage, Sue will help. Sue's licensed in 36 states now, so reach out and let Sue Mackey it happen for you. The best way to reach her is just give her a call at 520-977-7904 or in an email, spullen@fairwaymc.com. Fairway Independent Mortgage has an MLS number of 2289. Sue Mackey has an MLS number of 206048. That email again, spullen@fairwaymc.com, and that phone number is 520-977-7904. Shoot Sue an email and let her know she needs to update that address. Disclaimer time. This is where I tell everyone to lighten up. It's just a podcast. Trading is like that roller coaster at the amusement park. Thrilling, unpredictable, and potentially stomach-churning. What works for one person might leave another clutching their hat in the wind. Our hosts and guests, they're awesome, knowledgeable, full of insights, but we're not financial advisors. So don't rush to make any investment decisions based solely on our banter. Always consult with a professional or do your own research. Plus, let's face it, we like to have fun, laugh, enjoy the trading ride together. It's all in the name of good podcasting fun. So remember, take it easy, don't bet the farm, and keep your seatbelts on at all times. Thank you for listening. Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to a new installment of The Humanity of Trading. Joining me is Cleo, the brainchild behind this concept, and today's guest is none other than the host of Futures radio show, Anthony Crudele. Anthony, thank you so much for doing this. I'm still not quite sure why you agreed to come talk to us, but I'm not gonna fight it.
Oh, man, I love talking to traders, and I'm excited to be here.
Even traders who are still trying to figure it out?
That's us.
Absolutely.
Okay, good. Well, do you have anything you'd like to promote or share with the people before we kick off the discussion?
No, just my Twitter or X at Anthony Crudele, and anthonycrudele.com is where you can find everything. And I just want to mention one thing real quick, too, is that everybody, no matter where they are in their career, is always still trying to figure it out, Kyle.
I appreciate
Don't
that
let them tell you differently.
I've heard that too. I've heard that from many different people. Well, the day you think you've got it figured out is the day you eat the biggest losses. All right. Let's see. As far as we go, if anybody listening has any suggestions, corrections, or questions for future guests, you can send them to us via email at bandoftraderspodcast@gmail.com. You can join our free Discord server, or you can DM us on Twitter at financialinept1. All those links are going to be in the episode description, so you can peruse them at your own convenience. Now that the business end is done, let's kick things off. So, Anthony, normally we start things off with the guest's background, and I'm guessing that people probably know a lot more about you than the average listener or the average guest that we get on here. But I did want to kind of start with the way you got into the markets. I saw from an old interview that you'd done that it was actually kind of an accident how you got into trading in general. You want to walk us through kind of that story?
Literally an accident.
That's right, Cleo. Literally an accident. Accident out of high school, car crash, head-on collision.
Ooh.
Weird situation. I was with my buddy. He picked me up. We turned around the corner. My brother was coming home from high school with my car. And you know how you go to drive next to the person to see what they're talking about? You know how my brother was on the driver's side, so my buddy went to go to the left-hand side, and then they got confused, and we ended up hitting head-on. Not at a very rapid speed, but nonetheless, I had a compound fracture of my left femur. And it literally, I almost died, and I had to be transported to Loyola Medical for trauma.
The femur, I've heard, is like the most painful of the bones to break too. Can you confirm that?
Well, I was in so much shock, I don't even remember it. It was painful after the fact, but by the time I got to the hospital, I remember being in there and just kind of, really just in complete shock. And I remember they're saying, Anthony, we're gonna have to go in and reset your femur. Because at the time I could feel my toes and stuff, but I couldn't move my legs because every time I tried to move, it felt like disconnected. So it was very scary.
Wow, that is a weird feeling.
Yeah, I know. 18 years old, other side of high school, and this is what happens to me. So long story short, get out of there. I was actually trying to I wanted to get into business with travel. And at the time, I never really traveled much at all in my life. I'd been on one flight. I went to Orlando. My aunt, right after my grandma died, took us to Orlando to Disney World. I was a
Nice.
freshman in high school. It was the first time we ever went on like a family vacation outside of Illinois, Wisconsin area. So it was, I had this bug of wanting to travel. And so I was going to leave to go and work for American Express Travel. I actually did a 3-month schooling right initially as I graduated high school. I went that summer to Kissimmee, Florida, and that some people know is right outside of Orlando. And I did it was like Disney training. I went to Universal Studios, and it was like an internship type thing. And so when I came back, I was going to work for American Express Travel. I went there for 2 days after coming off this car accident and rehab and everything. I went in there. I said I just couldn't even be in there. I just was not. I didn't just even feel good. And so I took a job downtown. We call it downtown. I lived in the western suburbs of Chicago. And I went downtown and I took a job as a runner at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange for Lynn Waldock.
Partly as a movement to rehabilitate, right? That's what I read somewhere is
that's why I chose
amazing.
runner.
That's freaking awesome.
I knew nothing about it. I knew no one there. It turned out that my uncle or my friend's uncle had worked there. And so, I ended up finding some people there. Not the Uncle Tony story that some people know about. There's a story there with that. That's kind of funny. No, but my buddy Chucky, his Uncle Lou. So a lot of Italians. And he ended up working up in the British pound. And that's the only person I really knew there at the time.
So running, did that actually like do what you thought it was going to do? Like I guess I didn't really think that you'd actually be physically like sprinting everywhere you went as a runner, but I mean, I guess it makes sense that they probably want you getting there as quick as possible.
You know what's odd is that as a runner, you're actually not allowed to run on the trading floor. You can walk fast, but you can't run. Although some people did in certain instances, but you weren't really. Was technically they didn't want you running. You didn't want to be blasted into people,
right?
As chaotic as it was very organized. It was organized chaos, but. I mean, it's just one of those things where you're just in a moment, you're looking at a classified ad in the paper, nothing about it. I wanted to be downtown Chicago. I wanted to take the train. I wanted to get outside of just, living where I was living and just go explore the city. And so was it what I expected? Absolutely not. But it was awesome and I loved it and I never left.
What's funny is I wanted to travel too. My first job out of high school was, I guess the first real career would be joining the military. I thought, I'll join the Navy. I'll go get to see the world. Like, no, I got stuck on a ballistic missile submarine, which was ported out of like Seattle. And I got to see Hawaii once. And then we like transited the Panama Canal. And that was about the extent of my world travels. Everything else was just underwater and you didn't see anything.
Isn't that funny though, when we come out of high school or whatever school you're coming out of or wherever you're coming from, you have this idea of something that you want to do and where it takes you in your life, how that decision to whatever decision you make at that point in time, who even knows if it ends up being what you initially intended, but it could be something much bigger.
We just don't know.
Let's go on to the podcast. I kind of want to know about like how the podcast came about. Why did you start it? Like, what were you hoping to get out of that?
I started it simply because I felt that traditional media did not understand futures.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was actually at the time on the trading floor of CME. And this is when we went from CME to the Board of Trade. So we were at the CBOT at that time. And I was doing some TV hits through CNBC and Fox Business.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe not quite Fox Business at that point in time yet. But nonetheless, I was on there. And I always drew the short straw. And I was on at like 5:30 in the morning Central. For Worldwide Exchange. I'll never forget it. I was on there several times. And I don't know, they asked me questions about what was happening in financial markets, but it wasn't really pertaining to futures. And I felt that was a massive injustice of what we represented at CME, what we did as traders on the floor. And so I just felt that, why not do something on my own? I had talked to a couple people at the exchange and said, if I start this podcast, would you guys maybe be interested in a sponsorship? Initially, it was like, well, we don't really know if we do this. But, podcasting seems to be getting some legs. This is actually 10 years ago now.
Yeah.
Hard to imagine. But
I know, right?
Some people didn't even know what a podcast was at that time. And I would say that But the exchange understood that they wanted to help grow futures as well. So I put together a podcast. I started it and did some recordings, sent them to them and said, if you guys want to slap a sponsorship on this, I'd be happy to do this, versus doing financial media hits on the trading floor, which I felt were just a waste of time.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's how it started.
So I'm guessing they're probably talking more about like news events and like trying to interpret things that really have that explains what happens after the fact. What good is that going to do for you? Like now you can't act on stuff that happened in the past, right?
Yeah, or they ask me about ISM, or they'd ask me about utilities, or they'd ask me about things that I really didn't even look much at and didn't really pay much attention to, and they just weren't in my wheelhouse. I was a day trader trading even the S&P 500. It's not
Could you even say that? Could you?
Yeah, I mean, that's the reality. Is what's funny, and there's clips of me where they would ask me questions about certain things. I'd be like, I don't even follow that. I don't even know. It's just like I didn't want to be the person who tried to be something that they're not. And so, that was definitely what started it for me. And it kind of accelerated, once I had my heart attack, which was only a couple of years after that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even think maybe it was even that long. It was all really relatively close in terms of timing when that happened.
Actually, speaking of the heart attack, that's actually on my list here.
Actually, I'm sorry. I said a couple of years. I meant was that year, I believe. I can't remember exactly the years that I started the podcast, but I know we're right around 10 years for both of them. They kind of all coincided because I had moved to Florida. There was just all things happening. That was a very interesting time in my life.
I was going to ask about the heart attack since you brought it up. Is that like directly from the physical toll that trading kind of has on you? Or was there other circumstances you think that kind of led to that?
Well, physically, they told me there was nothing wrong with me after I had my heart attack. So that was kind of a jolt to the system. You're in an emergency room. First of all, they didn't know I was having a heart attack when I had gone in there. I had gone in there and said I was having chest pains. And they ended up saying, okay, I did CT scan, everything. They did everything until they got my blood work back and saw that my enzymes were spiked. They didn't even know I was having a heart attack because my blood pressure was pretty normal. EKG, all that was fine. And so they immediately transported me to a specialist at a different hospital. Another joyful time of my life, where I'm getting transported to a hospital for something major. It's fun. I get there and, doctor was great. And they went in and took a look at my heart with the camera.
Ooh, that doesn't sound fun.
Basically, well, that was actually very easy. They go through through your arm or your leg, and they go up there and take a look at it. And they were like, you have one artery that's like barely blocked. We couldn't even put a stent in it if we wanted. So you're physically fine. And he goes, talk to me. What's wrong? What's up? I'm like, well, I'm here with you right now. That's what's up. He's like, no, but seriously, he's like, Anthony, you need lifestyle changes. He's like, we can narrow it down to a few things. He's like, but medically, we have to diagnose it as a heart attack because of your enzyme spike with your blood. He's like, there's no way to actually treat it at this point. We can give you some things. Maybe it was a blood clot. Maybe it was a coronary spasm. Most likely, he's like coronary spasm, which is typically derives from people that are under a lot of stress.
Yeah.
People that'll have car accidents or a massive death in the family or something could happen. And I didn't have any of that. Actually, my life at that time wasn't so bad. But I just think that years of pressure and just the immense amount of pressure we put on ourselves as traders, I think it just, was a warning sign for me.
So how did you change your habits or your styles, or what changes came about because of that?
Oh, Kyle, we don't have enough time. But I will tell you this. Yeah, I was never somebody who I was not somebody who did drugs. I didn't even really drink that much. Not a smoker. I mean, my lifestyle when it comes to that aspect of it, especially coming from the trading floor, was pretty mild. I mean, I went out and I had drinks and I still ate pretty good. I actually had been working out since I was, a kid, always very active. So all of that was fine. I think it was just when we talk about the changes that I had to make, it was mostly about the work hard, but live easy. That you have or play easy.
Yeah.
People will say work hard, play hard. And I really wasn't that, but I would go from, trading all day, never leaving my screens, just buried in the screens from the time I was probably 19 years old, trying to learn charts all the way up to that age when I was, 36,
Mhm.
which now I'm 46. And, at that point, it just had just the immense amount of pressure that we put on ourselves as traders, I think is just not talked about enough, because day in, day out, it is the Super Bowl for us, especially when you have to pay the bills and you don't have any money, which was like that for me for a lot of my career.
Yeah.
And, and it's difficult, and, it just wore me out. And, a lot of people depended on me when I became successful as well. I think sustaining success is actually harder than reaching a level of success, because now there's expectations involved and you have more bills. Your life is built around you. You have other people depending on you, and just things happened in my life to where I'm somebody where if somebody ever needed something, my family, I'm always there for them. And it just, I kind of wear that kind of pain,
Mhm.
for everybody else. I
Yeah.
don't want them to suffer from it. And so what I did, back to the question, is what did I do to change, was really there were so many different levels of what I had to implement in my life. I think I'm a very different person now than I was then, because of the ability to slow things down. I'm more in control of situations now. I'm able to think just as quick, but I don't have to react as fast.
Mhm.
I was able to really control my breathing. I worked extremely hard at controlling breath, slowing down my heart rate, doing things like that. I went from somebody who just was constantly lifting weights. I started picking up golf, doing other things to concentrate and
Mhm.
focus away from the screens, meditation, yoga, Pilates.
Golf doesn't seem to fit in with those.
Yeah, what's funny is that, like, it's because I'm so competitive that initially it was difficult. Now, even to this day, it's like I want to play well, and I've gotten a lot better at it. But it's still a very much a release, because when I'm out there, I'm only thinking about that. And I think that when my life was only trading then, and my life now is not only trading. And I think that I'm better for it. I think that it allows me to be not only just a better person and a healthier person, but to be a better trader as well, because I'm not so consumed by it,
Mhm.
and I don't allow things to bother me the way that they used to. But that was a very, very difficult challenge. And so on the surface, it may not seem like I'm much of a different person. Maybe physically, I'm probably the same weight and everything like that as I was then. I might even be a little bit lighter, but
Lucky.
not much. Yeah, right. Like I said, I've always been diet conscious. I've always been, I do. I mean, today I actually went and I get IV therapy now, which I'll go and get like a Myers cocktail. Some people may know what that is.
I think I've heard of that.
Yeah, I do. I do a lot of things now for myself more than I did. So I take care of myself more in that respect. And I'm more conscious and self-aware of where I'm at within my stress. And so it may not sound like a ton to some people, like, oh, I went from X amount of weight, or I stopped eating meat, and I didn't, that was not it. It was internalizing things. I'm just a different person in the way that I deal with that. And that took a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I know what you're talking about there.
So I want to say that my internet has been choppy and it hasn't been working, but I've been hearing you, and I really liked what you just said around sustaining success is harder than attaining it at first. And I'm interested in that. Like, what's hard about it?
Yeah, how did the challenges change?
I think that reaching a level of success, whatever that may be for someone, is easier because your mind is focused on that one single goal.
Hmm.
So whether it's a dollar amount, it's consistency, it's something in your mind that you feel is what you need to be successful as a trader, right?
Mhm.
And it's really a combination of both those things I just mentioned. But at some point, you get to a point where you've made some money, you've done some things, and you've built up a life around you while you're trying to reach that level, right? And so along the way, you've had small successes and building on it.
Mhm.
Then you get to a point where you've reached what you would consider a great level of success or a good level of success, and now you have to sustain it. And now you have all of these things around you that you've built, and now you have to keep them. That's hard.
And is it pressure? Like, is it internal pressure? Is it external pressure? Other people expecting it from you? Like, that's what I imagine is there's like a pressure.
It's all of it.
Yeah.
And I think, it was a big reason why I had my heart
Mm-hmm.
attack. I think, I had 3 homes, expensive cars, did a lot of things, and I was doing very well. Even at that time, it wasn't like I was, absolutely crushing it. I mean, you always have ebbs and flows of it, but, you just put so much pressure on yourself to keep what you have and then continue to build on what you have. And then life throws different things at you. I mean, there's always something that comes up, just like with the markets today as we're recording. The markets got thrown a little bit of a curveball and the markets moved accordingly.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing for life. And so when you're trying to sustain a level of success, when you are the end all be all, when you have to come in and every single day you have to be on your A game or at worst your B game, because if you're not, you're giving back to the market and the market's taking it from you and it loves to take from you. And next thing you know, you have to build that back up. And it's always, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. It's constant trying to sustain what you have and build on what you have. And so once you finally got to a level that you would consider comfort, right, or reach the level of success, it's now very, very difficult to sustain it because it took everything you had to
Right.
get there.
Mm.
And now you're like, well, God, can I even take a break? Can I have a moment here? And you don't get it because nobody's paying you. Nobody's paying your bills. And the minute you stop performing as a trader, it starts dwindling your account. And it's just the
Mm-hmm.
reality of it. And so I felt an immense amount of pressure at that point because, and several points in my life for that matter, because when I finally got to a level where I felt pretty good about what I did, I'm like, wow, now I have to sustain this. And you don't have a plan for that because most people like myself, if you come into this business, you never
Mm-hmm.
had money.
So it's a first time experience.
It's a first time experience. And all of a sudden you have some money and you think, wow, yeah, you think, you're Mr. Big Shit. And really, in reality is you see all these other people that have had families tell them what to do with their money or they've had this guidance. I didn't have that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my family is the best. I mean, we have close as a family as you're ever going to have, but we don't come from wealth. My family works their entire careers, right? And then their Social Security when they retire.
Mm-hmm.
And so they don't know what to do when you have wealth. My family didn't have stocks or, trusts or any of that. And so you when you finally make some money, you think to yourself, well, I'm here. And now what? And now you don't know what to do with the money. And now you have all these other decisions you have to make along the way. And it's just, it's just tough. That's all I could say.
So, how did you navigate this? I mean, one of the questions that I love asking people is, do they go to therapy or have they gone to therapy, right? Like, I think people talk about this, that expanding your capacity or your wealth can be actually really hard for exactly this reason. We don't know exactly what we're stepping into, and we might have a glass ceiling and we might self-sabotage. There might be all sorts of things that happen. So, how did you maintain that? I imagine it wasn't a clear, straight road or something, but how did you maintain it?
Well, now you have different goals, right? And now you're
Mm.
you're spending your time not just on the path that you've been on, you're spending it on additional paths and you learn how to do that, right? I mean, I would think that anyone that's a trader and who's found success, once their mind is wrapped around what they need to do, they can go in that direction and they can stay hyper focused on that direction, even if it's multiple directions. But the thing is, you have to start putting it into play. You have to start thinking about what you have to do. And for me, it came from some reading, and some talking to other people, mentors, asking questions. A lot of my friends are a lot older than I am.
Mhm.
And I say a lot older, God forbid they hear this. They're all going to be busting my chops about this, but they're older than I am. And it's, we have this in common. A lot of them are business owners or they can relate to what, and where I've been in my life. And I'm constantly asking them questions and constantly picking their brains, even to this day, about how they were able to finally take a breath, if they were able to do that, or like what they had to do in order to get to the positions that they're in now. right? And so, you learn by looking at what other people are doing, asking questions. I think books help as well. I didn't go to therapy for this, or I had really didn't even think about that. I mean, I had friends around me that were successful, and so that allowed me to start asking them questions, and then, like I said, you figure it out. I go back to my dad's best advice as a kid. One of the best things he said to me was, "Oh, you want to do it? We'll figure it out."
Yeah.
Right? I mean, my parents, I didn't go to college, and I didn't have them saying, "Anthony, go do this or go do that." My dad was like, work, pay your bills. You're gonna have to pay rent if you're living at home,
Mm-hmm.
but get your ass up and get it done. That's it. The only thing they would not tolerate is laziness, right? They
Yeah.
wouldn't handle me sitting at home doing nothing. And so when I was trying to figure out trading, many times they'd come to me, my mom, my dad, and be like, we see what it's doing to you. You're not making money. Why don't you go do something else? And I said, well, I can't do anything else because it's the only thing I see myself as. And he's like, well, you're not succeeding at it. So why would you keep doing this to yourself? Well, I said, because, this is just who I am, Dad. And he goes, well, then figure it out.
Oh, that's
Figure
awesome.
it out. And so if you think about that, it's not like he never told me what to do, but he said, if you really want to do it, you'll figure it out. And I think that is still the best advice I've gotten to this day, because every time I run into an obstacle, I look at it and say, you figured all this out up to this point, you can figure that out too.
Right. Instead of becoming an unsolvable problem, it's something that has a solution, and that just helps put you, I guess, in the right mindset to be able to go and figure out what that solution is.
And what is it about trading that it is who you are? Like, how could you say that to your dad? I know I'm not successful, but this is who I am. I'm doing this. What was it about trading and about you that had you know that?
Well, there's a few things to that. I would say one of the main things was I felt I was actually good at it, even though I was losing. And I know this can resonate with so many people, because you're like, man, I really think I'm good at this, but I'm not making any money. And it's so strange. And nobody else that's not a trader can understand that.
Mhm.
Nobody.
Totally.
I know exactly what you're saying.
Right? Like, you literally are like, I cannot believe that I actually think I'm good at this, but yet I keep losing money. And it's pretty funny. But it's also, it's what puts us, so much stress on us. But there was that. And the other thing was, I just looked at the business and I have a passion for it. And I felt that I understood it. I felt that I felt I was good at it. I felt that I could figure it out. I loved everything about the lifestyle of it. That definitely played a role. Like, I wanted to be that person. Some people, you ask actors, they can go back in time and they could say, well, I wanted to be like, so-and-so or whatever, right? Like, I've watched a lot of those interviews and you see successful people that they had something that they emulated,
Yeah.
right? And so they
Yep.
saw that, right? They visualized it, right? I know people that have vision boards. I never had those, but I visualize myself as that, and anybody who really wants to do something has to have a visual representation of how they see themselves. And so for me, that's the only way I saw myself. I saw myself walking into places as that person, right? I saw myself doing things in life as that person. Even though I was not yet successful, I felt that I was close to being that.
Was there any sort of I'm trying to think of how to phrase this the right way. Like the idea of, I am a trader, even if I'm not successful yet, that doesn't matter. Like, I need to start thinking of myself in this way. Otherwise, if I continue thinking of myself as an aspiring trader or a learning trader or someone who's trying to figure it out, then that kind of paints you into that, that's who you are. Like, thinking of yourself as in terms of I am going to figure this out. I have figured this out. I will figure this out. Is there some of that to it too? I don't know if that's not necessarily arrogance, but just supreme belief in yourself kind of thing.
You remember the movie Boiler Room?
I know the name, but I don't remember the movie.
Cleo, do you?
I do.
Remember when Ben Affleck goes, act as if?
Yes.
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 Okay. I think that's what you're asking me, right, Kyle?
Yes.
Act as if you are that person, right? And there's definitely some of that to it, because if you don't have thick skin and if you don't have the belief that even though you are shitting the bed right now and you aren't making any money, that at some point you have to act as though you are pretty good. And, because I think that you don't want to lose your confidence. I think that that's part of it, but ultimately that was not what really directed me,
Mm-hmm.
put me in that direction. It was just, I go back to the visual aspect of it. I had this feeling that I would be successful in it, this vision of it. And I can go back to even where I'm at now when I started the podcast and anything else I've done. Anything that I have taken on, I have looked into the future and said, can you see yourself doing this? Can you sustain it? Do you love it enough to continue on this path? And the reality is, I don't do anything unless I see myself in that position.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so that to me is the overwhelming driver of everything I do.
I love that answer.
This is amazing. It's totally amazing.
Longtime fans of the show should be familiar with the lender formerly known as Sue Pullen, and I'm pleased to announce that she's back, fresh off a rebrand and ready to help as Sue Mackey. Sue is a certified mortgage advisor at Fairway Independent Mortgage, an equal housing lender who focuses on finding the right product for you and your needs. She has over 20 years of experience helping thousands of homeowners. Whether it's purchasing, refinancing, or even a reverse mortgage, Sue will help. Sue's licensed in 36 states now, so reach out and let Sue Mackey it happen for you. The best way to reach her is just give her a call at 520-977-7904 or in an email, spullen@fairwaymc.com. Fairway Independent Mortgage has an MLS number of 2289. Sue Mackey has an MLS number of 206048. That email again, spullen@fairwaymc.com, and that phone number is 520-977-7904. Shoot Sue an email and let her know she needs to update that address.
So I come from a psychological background and personal development, and I love trading because of the personal development opportunities that are in trading, and I get to know myself more fully. And I've been to countless workshops in general. And one of the things that's so prevalent in so much personal development is visioning yourself in that state, right? Or it's even, I think it's called The Secret or something.
I know
It's
Rich
like,
Friesen talked about it.
yeah, like where you are stepping into the reality that is already laid out in front of you. All you're doing is stepping into it, right? If you have this vision, that's what actually makes it possible. And I really love your articulation about this as a trader and as everything you do. It's
I was
incredible.
thinking more about like the way Rich Friesen kind of talks about it, like the fear of success that he's talked to us about in the past. Like there's like this fear of like what's going to change about your life right now if you do actually achieve success, and like that unknown can be scary. But if you spend time visualizing what that's going to look like, then maybe that becomes less of an unknown and makes it become more desirable, I guess would be maybe the right word.
Yeah, and not only what it looks like, but what it feels like too.
That, yes, I think that's the key there.
Yeah.
Because yeah, you envision the smells, the sounds, the way things feel. If you're eating like fancy food, what does it taste like all the, like try to put all the senses to it, not just the sight part too.
That's exactly the way it is. And, going back to what you said, Cleo, like it's not just envisioning yourself in that moment. It's actually like you feel like you are partly already in that moment. And I can't explain it. It's just like when you walk into the room or when I was doing certain things, I started to act as though I was on that path, like I'd already had been there. And it kind of like goes back to like what you had asked the question, Kyle,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
act as if, right? Even though you're not there, but you start to get that feeling, and there's a couple things I think as I started to follow some really good sports people. I remember like Kobe Bryant. I really loved Kobe Bryant.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very sad that he was gone, but if you really watched Kobe Bryant, what was very interesting to me about him is he actually morphed into what I would consider like a Michael Jordan protege.
Yes,
If you
yes.
ever really listen to Kobe Bryant, he almost sounds like Michael Jordan. It's very strange. And right. And the way I looked at that in those moments was like, because obviously from Chicago, I was a Michael Jordan guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw Kobe Bryant almost like morphing into like a Michael Jordan type figure because I think he emulated him or he had the thoughts of being him or beating him or, whatever was in his mind. And he almost was able to control situations at such a young age because he saw what Michael Jordan did at an older age, that he was able to do that in those moments. by me being around other floor traders and other successful people, I saw that how they were able to act and interact in certain situations. I'd be with people that had money or able to do whatever they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And so in my mind, I envision myself doing similar things, right? And how would I do it, right? And so that's, as things started to happen, I was almost molding myself into those situations.
I think it also helps too, having people that you can look up to. Like, it's hard to envision yourself in a position like if you're somebody who's just sitting at home trying to learn this thing but has no experience dealing with people who are successful. Like, how do you know what that success even looks like then? So it's almost, I think that goes back to, like, you've been a big proponent of mentorships, I think, over the years. Like, you've talked a lot about the importance of finding a good mentor. And I wonder how much that kind of plays into it too, you think? Like, is it important to have those people to talk to, or is it more just important to have those people to look up to?
It's definitely both, but I
Mm-hmm.
don't think you need to actually meet your mentors.
Mm-hmm.
I do think it's important to have people to talk to, but they don't necessarily have to be your mentors, right? Like my dad's my mentor. He's my best friend. I talk to him every single day, 2, 3 times,
Mm-hmm.
right? But my dad and I don't talk about trading,
Right, right.
Yeah.
but my dad puts my head in the right place, and there's a
Mm-hmm.
difference there, right? And so mentors can do and achieve different things for you. I have different mentors throughout my career, that help me with different things. Some I talked with, some I never spoke with. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that it goes back to just how do you envision yourself and how do you envision yourself being, in certain situations. I also want to bring up the point that I think is why a lot of traders have their worst day after their best day. And I was somebody who was on this cycle, is because they don't envision what to do after they have the good day. Right. And so when you have your best day, a lot of times you have your worst day because you're caught off guard. Like you finally did something and now you blow it, you piss it right back. And you're like, why is this happening? Well, it's happening because you had a plan to get there, but you didn't have a plan to do something
For after
To
that.
maintain, to
and so
maintain,
you
yeah,
didn't have that. And right, it's like for me now, like because it's happened to me so many times, and I will tell you, it still happens to me this day, not often, but I will have like a really good day, and all of a sudden the next day I'll be just, you know what I mean? I've
yeah.
still put a number on it, but it's like it's so freaking frustrating and how that happens. But ultimately, it happens because when we get to a level of any sort of success in trading, immediately either we want more or we have a different goal at that point. We have not emulated that exact moment. And
Mm-hmm.
so until you've been through it and understand how to slow things down, Kyle, you asked me earlier, like, where am I different now? Is that now I slow things down. Like today, I didn't catch any of that move. I didn't catch the news. I mean, whatever. I
Mm-hmm.
know tomorrow will be there. And I was not that person, right? I was the guy who was always chase.
Yeah.
And I feel like I needed to catch everything, or I needed to be a part of it, or I needed to do this. I don't feel I need to do anything anymore. I mean, I feel like I need to do what I know I can do.
Mm-hmm.
And when the situations are there, you could bet that I'm going to do well in those situations if I'm in the right state of mind. And it's because I position myself to be that person,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so that's where the growth comes in. That's where longevity comes in.
And it sounds like trading is still interesting to you. Like, what is your relationship currently to trading? Because maybe you might not even need to trade so much these days, but right, you're still in the game. What's your relationship to trading?
Yeah, I mean, I guess from a financial standpoint, I look at it and say, do I need to trade the way I did, many years ago? The answer is no,
Mm-hmm.
right? But the difference is that do I feel that I still need to make money? Do I still feel like I need to perform? Yeah, otherwise I wouldn't do it. And my relationship with it is that I look at it as a puzzle, right? I mean, when I look at everything out there in the marketplace, I enjoy being part of that,
Mm-hmm.
right? The money side is what the money side is, right? But the point of it is like I wake up every morning and I look at the business and I say, what is happening in this market that I have not seen? What have I seen before? How can I piece this puzzle together? And is there an opportunity for me, right? And so that excites me. But do I feel the same way that I was years ago, where I felt like every day I had to put a piece into the puzzle? No, right? I mean, you're either the kid who lays the whole puzzle out there and you have to finish the puzzle when you're done, or you're the person who can come back to the puzzle day in, day out, and eventually do one that's massive. And you say, I don't know how that guy did that over the course of so many years, but they did it because every day it was interesting to them, right?
Mhm.
And they knew that ultimately what the goal was to finish the puzzle. But they knew that even if they didn't, it was just like finding that one piece to fit into that one day. And so I'm more that person now than the person who I was years ago, where I'd throw all the pieces out there and I'd have to finish the puzzle. I had to find something for that day. Some days I might look at the picture or I might look at the puzzle and say, there isn't a piece that fits, but it still interests me. And it interests me at a very high level. And so I take it very seriously. It doesn't interest me at any sort of low level because I want to try and constantly grow as a trader. I want to have that control over myself to be a better decision maker.
I freaking love that example that you used, the puzzle. And I'm thinking back in my history, and I know that like I always have trouble not finishing a book when I pick one up. As soon as I finish up or pick up a book, if it's interesting, then I have to see the end of it. Same thing with like puzzles. Like I'm the type of person, once I get on a roll, I just want to finish it. It's not easy for me to do a little piece of it and then walk away and then come back to it another day. And maybe that's something that I need to work on. I actually made some notes while you were talking there about some stuff that I want to add to my daily routine, and some ideas that I've got to try to practice that and build that, like slowing things down. I think that's the key that you just said there.
Yeah, and I love that it's still interesting to you, that there's still growth opportunities, it sounds like, for you as a trader too. And I'm interested in this, like what your current process is around your own growth. Like, are there any challenges that you're working with currently?
Yeah, I think we all have ebbs and flows with challenges, right? Some that you thought were gone resurface. You never totally master them. I think that they kind of change as well, and
Hmm.
the way that they come back, they might not come back the same.
Hmm.
I think for me right now, where I feel strong, I think maybe we'll start there, is just understanding market environments and knowing really what's my market environment or not. And so when I come in each and every day, I feel that I have a really good grasp of what's happening in the marketplace. And so I've been very patient with just accepting the fact that this is definitely not a time where I want to be super active. And I think where the challenge comes in is the times that I do get active, to be able to accept if it's not working, that okay, you've waited this long and you've been patient, you've waited for it, and now all of a sudden it's kind of blown up in your face. You know what I mean? That's
Hmm.
happened to me a few times this year where I've just been like, we've kind of shifted in and out of environments where it's like, okay, I think I'm ready to do this. I step in and I do it and I execute it. And it just is like everything I thought that would happen did not. And you're just like, oh my God, and then you have this, do you want to fight it? Do you really want to stay and stay with it? How much more do you want to risk? Is this, that's the thing, is when you get into very active environments, it's easy to come in one day and make a mistake because the next day there's another opportunity. But when markets get really slow, it's very challenging to stay true to everything you want to do. And when it's not working and when you finally step in and it doesn't work, you're like, oh man, like this is not working for me right now. And it might be weeks or days, or you don't know when the next opportunity comes. And so I think the struggle that I find right now is that it's kind of like ebbs and flows of environments for me. And so I want to come in on certain days, and if it doesn't work, I have to really stay true to be like, listen, don't expand your risk just on this day because it's not working. Expand your risk or press it when it is working, and you have to respect that feedback. And so I just think on a personal level, I'm always working on that. But that's kind of where I'm at right now, because this environment, these sleepy bull markets, although that might have changed today at least a little bit, and
Yeah.
who knows, are always tough for day traders. It's when I say the portfolios do real well. I own long, a bunch of stocks that are doing okay. Maybe not today, but overall, I did buy Tesla the other day though. That did good today. But
Oh yeah.
I think that and so that's where it is. That's where I'm at right now.
Hmm.
Yeah. I love what you said too about you thought you worked through something and then it comes back differently. That's really interesting. And I'm also curious, when something blows up in your face and it doesn't work out in the way that you want after you've been waiting patiently, and then you get in and then it's not what you want and it blows up, what do you do with that? Like I heard you say earlier, you do Pilates and yoga, and what do you do? I mean, I'm assuming that that's a resource for you in those moments, but when you're frustrated, what do you do with that as a trader, you personally?
I think just separation from it is the only thing that ever worked for me. It doesn't matter what I'm doing. It doesn't matter what the activity is. It's complete separation, because the thing is, in the moment, we all know, right? You're like, okay, I'm willing to lose $500 right now. I'm willing to lose $1,000, whatever the number is, and then you lose it, and you're like, okay. At that moment, you're like, well, I actually would be willing to lose 1,500 because, why not? I kind of feel like, this makes sense for me to do. And then you lose 1,500 and you're like, okay, I really was okay with losing 2,000 and that's it. Right.
The
And then you
micro
do that,
negotiations.
right.
Yeah.
You're making those negotiations as you go by. Right. And the next thing you know, you do that and it happens. Right. I mean, and I'm not saying that this is what I'm doing right now, but it's kind of the principle. What happens behind it is that, you come in, you wait, and then you allocate your risks to it. And then it's not working. And you're like, you know what, this is really what I want. And then you're negotiating with yourself to risk a little bit more. And we all do it. And then ultimately it happens. And then you're like, okay, now I'm even more pissed, because if I would have just taken the loss that I knew initially I wanted, because that's what fell into
Right.
my risk parameters. And now I'm outside that. And already now the only thing I can think about is that stupid ass decision I made. And also the only thing I can think about is how do I make that back?
Yeah.
And so already I'm I'm in a bad place, right? I'm putting myself in a position where I am no longer focused on what I was going into that position, right? I'm thinking about all the wrong things. So separation is the only thing that has ever worked for me. So anytime that I'm working my way through anything, and like I said, this year I've had, just a bumpy year. It's been like good, and then it's bad. And then it's like, okay, I wait. And then it's like good. And the next thing you know, it's this environment changed again. And I'm going, okay. And I had a couple times where I fought it and, it just didn't work out for me. But what brought me back and kept me from really going beyond my risk parameters was just removing myself from it. Just knowing
Mm-hmm.
that here's, if there's anything you can commit to as a trader, is that if you don't take real time away after a bad decision, that bad decision is not the one that's going to hurt you. It's the next one.
Mm.
And so that time away, that reflection is what allows you to make a good decision following a bad one. The minimal time away that you take, you are more susceptible to making a worse decision right after.
That is going to get clipped.
It's really
That is
good.
such a beautiful way of saying that. Oh my gosh. Do you have any? I kind of want to ask a couple questions about the podcast, but I don't want to change focus yet, so I'll hold off for a minute.
I was going to go toward the podcast too, around like, has the podcast supported your trading or you as a trader? I imagine that they're collaborative for you, but how has your podcasting influenced you as a trader?
Yeah, it's influenced me from the macro side of things, on the technical
Mm-hmm.
side as well. I'm not what I would consider a traditional technician. I'm somebody who does their own work, and I believe in what I believe in, and I think that that's got to be the same for everybody. I don't think there's any right way to be a technician. I
Mm-hmm.
think that there's a lot of ways to be very good at technicals and have a lot of success. Macro for me is where the podcast changed my thinking and allowed me not only to be, I think, a better trader, but a better investor and a better understanding of just markets. And I think that the
Mm-hmm.
podcast has really helped me that way, because it's opened me up to seeing how people look at the markets. And so it's helped me in moments of understanding context and nuance. And that's not my words. Those are the words of a mentor of mine, Ira Harris, who really put this to me. And I was thinking in those terms, but when he said it to me, it helped me understand how it was helping me. Right. And it was years ago when yield curves were steepening or we were going into a recession. I can't remember the exact time of it. I can remember the moment more than the time. And it was just understanding from Ira's blog that, look, this is what's happening in the marketplace. And I remember the market dynamics were changing a little bit. And this is when the Fed was cutting rates, not raising rates. So it's years ago. And it just made me understand a situation that was happening in the marketplace that I did not understand prior. And the podcast helped that stuff become a reality to me, to say, look at Anthony, you didn't know, what a lot of this stuff meant. And it was funny. I came from the trading floor and people asked me questions about certain things. I'm like, I didn't even look at that. I didn't even care.
Yeah.
I just did what I did and it was it, right? In my own little world. And I found success there. But what opened me up to become a better trader in the moment is understanding, well, yield curve steepening right now, or like there's something happening here that is bigger than what I'm looking at. And I'm able to step away from that moment, or I'm able to look at that moment and say, that actually is accentuating what you're looking at. You have a macro and technical collision, or it's coinciding. And I was able to step on the gas or step off the gas in those moments. And I know that most day traders will say, well, the market will just tell you that in the prints. It'll tell you that in the price. It'll tell you that in the order flow. If you're hyper focused on that, yeah, I'm not going to say it isn't. If you're somebody who's really, really, really short term, it may or may not help you. But I will tell you this. Position sizing comes down to where you have more hands and eyes looking at one direction versus the other. And if you can find that little nuance in a contextual situation, I don't care who you are, it will make you better.
That's a great point. Confluence, right? The confluence of ideas or things coming together. The more of them happen, then the more people are seeing it, the more likely that idea is to play out.
And if it happens in the moment, if you see it in the moment, that's where the real edge is. The edge is like, okay, that's happening right now.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, all my friends that were at prop desks, they'd all be sitting there being like, look at the euro versus this right now. Look at this. They would, what's happening today? Oh, is it non-farm? Is it this? What's happening? And there'd be communications. And I would see guys become very successful in those types of settings because they were putting context and nuance into place. And ultimately, that's where you really become a trader that is just paying the bills or making some money to actually having long-term sustainability in this business.
And it sounds like your podcast has supported you. Like you wouldn't be as successful as you are.
I would say that
without
yes.
the podcast.
Let me ask you a question. If there's anything that you got out of podcasting that you weren't expecting, like when you got into it, you probably had an idea of what you thought it was going to be about, but what are some of the things that kind of surprised you about doing it, or some of the things that keep you doing it?
Well, first, the thing I would say is the relationships I built from it. I would have never expected that because initially my thought was, I'm going to talk to people I know. I'm going to put myself in comfortable situations and ask questions. I'm not an interviewer, right? It opened up my horizons by talking to people that I wouldn't have ever met and became friends with, or just having conversations with people that I never would have really anticipated how they would impact my life, and whether it's a really small way or in a big way. I'm very grateful for that. I also think that when I look at the podcast, it opened me up to a community outside of the trading floor that I never anticipated. And a lot of that is podcasts. A lot of that is social media. Obviously, I think they're kind of hand in hand, right? Because I actually got on social media because of the podcast. So
me too.
So that happened and it built a community. I wouldn't be talking to you guys today. I wouldn't have talked to many other people. I wouldn't have had messages come to me on Twitter. I have a free Discord now. I wouldn't have done a lot of these things because of it. And I think that I'm very grateful for that because I go back to that moment where we talked about where only a trader could understand this. And when I am on social media, when I am talking with you guys, when I am on with my Discord or whatever it is that I'm doing, you can have this open discussion that you can't have in your everyday life, right? You're not going to have this discussion when you're close to friends unless they're doing the same thing that you are, right?
Right.
So I think that has been really a blessing because I was surrounded by that at a young age with the floor, and the podcast has opened that up for me at this phase of my life.
The fact that the relationship building is the thing that you highlighted, I find fascinating. And I think that you say you're not a good interviewer, or you didn't think you were, but I think right there, the fact that you're building great relationships means that you are a good interviewer. You are doing something that's connecting with these people. And like, I think that that's what a lot of people really respect about you is just the genuine nature that you have. You're such a great, honest, genuine person. And I've heard that from multiple people that have had interactions with you, whether it be through DMs or other podcast recordings they've done. Everybody I've talked to has always had just the nicest things to say about you. And I just want to make sure that I at least get a moment to say this little thing because there's so many bad people out there that are just awful for the industry and just looking to take advantage. and they get all the focus. Like, we need to celebrate some of the good people in the industry. So thank you, Anthony.
Well, I greatly appreciate that.
All right. Do we have any other questions? We're probably getting close to the end here. We got to let you get out.
Well, I have one back on the theme of growth. So we're talking about growth as a trader. Has trading supported your growth as a human in some ways? Like, right, they're going to probably go hand in hand, but maybe ending with that is like, how has trading supported you
Yeah,
growing your capacities as a human?
Well,
that's a great one to end on.
because it's all I know, it's all I've done. And so I feel so much of it has molded me as who I am as a person. It's hard to say how much different I would be if this was not the path that I would have taken. But I will say this about it, that at an early age, it put a lot on me to really test myself and push myself to levels I don't think anything else would have. It forced me to learn about things at an early age that I would not have probably learned. It took me to places financially and I think mentally that I would have probably not pushed for if I not had to push for.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that when I look at trading, I look at it as a human, what it's done is it's allowed me to test myself at higher levels than I would have otherwise, I think. And it's made me more grateful and, thankful for that opportunity to have been able to push through those challenges.
Mm-hmm.
And it also, it's allowed me to, we go back to slowing things down in my life and to really take pleasure in like the day-to-day life that I have. Right. And so it's given me those challenges, but it's given me the ability to be in the moment and be very thankful for it. Right. I don't have anyone to answer to. Of course, you always have somebody you're answering to in your life in some shape or form, but it's allowed me to really, to be the person that I want to be in the time that I have off. And so it's hard to actually pinpoint it, but if I had to say that, that's what I would say.
I think that's a fantastic answer.
Great.
All right. Well, I think I can hear the closing bell kind of dinging off in the distance. So we're probably going to have to say goodbye here. Anthony, thank you so much for coming here and doing this with us.
Thank you.
If anybody out there wants to hear more, don't worry. There's almost a decade's worth of back catalog of Futures Radio that you can binge on till your heart's content. All you got to do is just go to futures.anthonycrudele.com and you find the latest episodes on there. Anthony also mentioned his Twitter, where you can find some of his takes. He'll post the latest episodes on there, and also should be able to find the link to the Discord in there too in your bio.
Yep, that'll all be in there.
Okay, good. And I'll make sure I put all the links in the episode description too, just so you guys can find them. Cleo and I will be back soon with another exciting episode. But until then, share this with your friends like a screenshot of a 200-point runner and have a great day. This podcast is intended for informational and educational purposes only. It does not constitute financial or investment advice and should not be construed as such. The hosts, guests, and contributors of this podcast are not licensed financial advisors, brokers, or professionals. Any trading or investment decisions made based on the content of this podcast are solely at the listener's discretion and risk. Trading and investing in financial markets carry inherent risks, and past performance is not indicative of future results. Listeners should conduct their own research and seek advice from qualified financial professionals before making any financial decisions. The views, opinions, and information shared in this podcast are those of the individual contributors and do not necessarily reflect the views or policies of the podcast creators or associated organizations. Produced by China Shop Productions.